Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Pronago, bringing you some Cosmonarchy casting. I hope you have appreciated the event that we ran just recently, but it's time to get back to the 1 versus 1s between some of the highest ranked players within our environment. Neblime against Hamster once again, a repeat of the grand finals of our last competitive 1 versus 1 tournament. That was full scale. That was Ascension number 7, if you guys remember. But they're on different races now. Let's see what happens on Sideshow. Hamster as the Protoss, Neblime as the Zerg, Neblime in the top left, Hamster in the bottom right. This XY to spawn map is indeed by myself. It's been a while since I've actually seen this, because obviously we're casting on the different map pool that is slated for that event that just concluded moments ago, it feels like. Obviously, I'm recording this ahead of time, so it doesn't feel like that at all, but I have to pull back the curtain every now and then and remind you guys that I am a man who makes an RTS, along with a lot of the people in the community. Shout out to my homie Veek7, who is joining me, of course, for the development of this project. The guy behind the fraud launcher, who has been hard at work for things like that, as well as, of course, a bunch of core improvements to the game. One of those things that is indeed a core improvement might be on display here momentarily, which is the order timer has been significantly handled, the order queue timer. It's an internal name, you don't really need to worry about it, but the fact of the matter is that when you see the units being a lot more responsive, instantaneously turning around to try to go back to mining and all this other stuff, and indeed when you see the worker instantaneously become the structure, well, yes, that is thanks to Veek7. So thank you, Veek7. Type thank Veek7, thank Mr. Veek, thank Mr. 7, I don't know, something like that in the comment section below. And of course, hop into our Discord server, because not only are we running events like what you just saw with the March Invitational A between a bunch of off-racing high-tier players and general, mid-tier players, and maybe some low-tier players as well. Not only did you see all that, but we have events coming up for the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop. And you know what that means? It means Neblime and Hamster will be there, either as these races or whatever other race they choose. Scribe Tickle. Nothing too fancy to comment on just yet, but we do have a double gate coming for our Protoss player. Nice to see some of the top tier players experimenting with the other races and seeing what's going on there. I feel like that's neat. I feel like that's cool. Obviously, I'm envisioning a world where we have like, oh, it looks like the dragon's just heading up towards the top left instead of worrying too much about attacking this worker scout, so that's a little interesting. But yeah, I'm envisioning a world where we have a game eventually in the future that has like 20 different playable races. And it's like, yeah, I want you to be able to play more than one, you know what I mean? So we'll see if I can get there. We'll see if we as a community can get there. But just something to keep in mind. Just something pretty cool. We've got some Legionnaires coming. Always nice to see those bad boys. We got the Draconin out. That's Cosmonarchy's idea of a Dragoon. And a bunch of Quasilisks are in production as well. So some short range, early tier fodder units, but a lot of them are going to engage. We did see this puzzling move here of burrowing one of the workers. I don't know what that's all about. Looks like he just figured out that he had done that, so he must have like group selected it with this guy, burrowed it over there at the same time. Neblime being a little bit silly right now, but going to go ahead and drop a defensive structure. Worker count's exceedingly even right now. And it looks like this worker has migrated over just in time to block the Nexus from Hamster and befuddle his opponent. Looks like we already had a bit of a scuffle. Not only lost that one Quasi, but also lost a Legionnaire. And unfortunately for Hamster, he rallied another one directly in there. Thankfully corrects the rally in a couple of other locations. Let's actually see where these are rallied to. Yeah, okay, looks like he's fixed that particular problem. But there are 11 Quasilisks on the way, on the hunt. And they will be in hot pursuit. We have a bit of a rotation with other Legionnaires coming on down. There's not really any kill pressure with this attack. One of the things that I like to point out to people who are watching Cosmonarchy, maybe for the first time, or they're maybe still new to the idea of this strange subculture, subgenre forming within the Brood War space, within the RTS sphere, is a lot of it is still very much evocative of bog standard RTS gameplay, right? You've got tech, you've got different power levels for units. You've got units that are more efficient or less efficient at each other. And just there, what you saw might have seemed like, oh, those Quasilisks, they did nothing to the Protoss. Why did Neblime even attack there? But I think the key detail there is the formation of the units, right? As we see him immediately put down some more anti-surface defenses, additional Drakidans rallying out, and an embassy on the way. So it looks like maybe a more macro-oriented play coming out from Hamster. Would not be surprised if he goes for the Witness again for early detection, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. And the reason why I'm bringing up those comparisons to other RTS games or RTS spaces, right? We're talking about how the positioning, the formation of units actually does make a huge deal in terms of who gets the wins. It's an easier thing to draw an attention to if you remember, like, you know, if anybody can cast their minds back to when they first watched, say, Terran versus Terran in Starcraft 1. Whoever has the more vultures can sometimes win, but a lot of the times it depends on the engagement. So you're seeing a very similar engagement to what we saw down there, except this time Hamster actually has more units, and yet he still almost lost his Drakenon, an expensive powerhouse unit. And you know, if Neblime had decided to stick it out there and see what he could do, it does feel like maybe he could have been a bit more successful. But we're seeing him go for the Quasilisk transport strategy. His third hatch, the macro hatch, has spread Kagra over here by the ramp, and he has not yet turned this into a Circuit. So this could actually be a pretty decisive move, but it looks like Hamster is deciding he wants to just focus on the static defense itself, instead of just running past and potentially punishing the complete absence of Quasis. You saw Neblime immediately pull the workers. That's because he wants to stop these units from moving up the ramp, but Hamster wasn't even thinking about doing that. And so even though he killed a Circuit, he didn't even fully kill it, because Zerg structures that mutate turn back into what they originally were after death. So he wiped some workers, he wiped some Quasis, but he lost a big part of his army. Now just down to 3 military units, and the Witness counts. So yeah, realistically, we're talking about a single Drakidon, a single Zealot, which is not even in position. This could be a very, very brutal attack. I mean, it's only 6 Quasis, but they kill infinity scribes in the right position. However, it does look like maybe the Ovaleth drop has been spotted out here. So the Drakidon will scramble back, the Zealot as well, the Witness simply rallying forward and will be hanging out at the outskirts as the Ovaleth does attempt to make it in there. But little does Hamster know that Ovaleth has nothing inside of it. So Neblime ending up just going to use it as a bit of a fake, bit of a scout. Unfortunately for him, I don't think there's a safe spot to hide. I think the Drakidons can move out down below that mineral field and attack it if Hamster wants to. Rallying some more units over here, workers getting tasked onto the ridge. We have a Hydroth Den on the way, so that is emerging as Neblime's favored move. He has not spotted the Prostration Stage. That's going up in the natural, so he could poke in there with the Quasis, but he doesn't necessarily have any guaranteed way to make it past the infantry that are the Disciple units that are popped out of the gateway. Kind of hanging out in that rally point there. Witness continuing to gather information. So yeah, okay, ski back to scab. We're actually going to be seeing the Skithra cores come out and emerge as solid options here. I'm kind of interested to see where we go with that. Like, that doesn't seem to me like necessarily something that would counter what Hamster is doing, but I think Neblime is just trying to get a bead on how powerful those tier 1.5 options are. He has decided to use an Ovaleth to transport a Kagrant over here. I was interested in seeing where that Ovaleth actually was. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Yeah, he's taking Kagrants and moving them over to try to establish ramp control in a couple of different locations. And that will help him get an isolated situation over here. These are novel mechanics, because obviously you can't do that in StarCraft 1, but in Cosmonarchy you absolutely can. Third base going down for both of our players, of course, the Zerg player being a little bit further ahead, and we do have gas caps coming, not only in the natural, which is already done, but just now in the main. That is actually within vision range of the Ovaleth, so Neblime, if he ever takes a look down there, will be able to see what his opponent is up to and realize, hey, he's actually going for something gas heavy. I wonder what that is. Maybe that'll provoke a deeper scout. Right now, it's just pariahs coming out of that prostration stage. We have the Witness being hightailed out of there because the Ovaleth is trying to chase it. The Skiths can come down and accompany it just to bop it at any time. But it doesn't seem like something that our Zerg player here is too hell-bent on dealing with. He might not have even noticed it too much. I assume he did based on that movement, but it's hard to say. Now, there's not really that much Vespene in reserve here for Neblime, whereas Hamster is doing his best. Okay, here we go. After regenerating some HP, the Ovaleth has decided to go ahead and scout. If he clicked on this structure, he'll know it's a prostration stage. He still has not scouted the ones already done. So the Skithra cores are going to come in here at a count of 14. I don't know that the Witness actually spotted any of them. It doesn't read like it is the case because there are no, there's nothing over here to defend this worker line. So with 14 of them, you're going to watch this worker count here on the left-hand side of that number, it's going to go kaput. And here we go, the pylon coming down as well. There needs to be a response. The pariahs are going to swarm in to try to see what they can do. They do deal splash damage, so they can be quite effective at this. But unfortunately, a big hit of workers has already happened. A couple of shots already ring out, and that is going to significantly reduce the HP of some of those units. But it's kind of like an Archon in some ways, except obviously the Archon still exists in the game. It's just a higher tier unit. And, well, the process of redistributing the workers to this base has begun, many of them going over to the gas, as Hamster is starting to think about how to catch back up in the worker count. Really, one of the best ways to catch back up after you lose a bunch of workers is to go and kill your enemy's workers. Already, a bunch of Drakodins are amassed over here to try to rip out the skits out of the sky, should they try to come in and harass the Nexus. We do have another Warden coming in on the backside of that, and I actually don't know where the pariahs went. Looks like one of them is just hanging out by the group over there. And yeah, a whole bunch of workers have indeed gotten bopped. Another one sort of rallying in. So of the 15 that entered, only one of them has actually died right now. And this feels like Hamster is being bullied kind of by his own results, right? That pariah struggling to get in onto the action. And this is the kind of thing where the Witness definitely should have been able to spot this. This is a very gas-intensive strategy. We see Neblime still has no tier 2 on the way. And so he kind of needs to win with this situation. I mean, he does have a little bit of gas coming, but you can't cap those geysers until you hit tier 2. So now he's entered into a situation where his forces are a little anemic. He can't exactly beat down what Hamster has done. So despite the fact that he's secured a significant economic lead, his Skither cores are going to be very, very underwhelming versus the Drakodins and the pariahs. The rest of his ground army is not going to do too hot versus pariahs and zealots. So it really does depend on the engagement, of course. There are all of these static defense structures that have been erected in this situation. Here comes the pariah to do his best to try to meet this force head on. But now as Neblime takes the fight, he's going to see if he can actually deal some damage and focus down that pariah. One of them is going to go down, but you can see just how potent this Protoss army actually is and how long the pariahs and similar units are staying alive. The Bactylisks doing their best to rip through the 4 armor of the pariah, and it's taking so very long. But there was only one of them on the field after the initial one took a lot of hits from the circuit. A couple reinforcements coming in. Remember, there was double prostration stage, so there are still a number of pariahs here. And that's going to cream right through the Zoryus. There's only the one Skither core left. The Bactylisks are about to be engaged upon by units that they simply cannot match. The Hydras, as they regress into Hydralisks, they will actually deal a little bit more damage, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And so, yeah, just like that, despite Neblime having such an economic advantage and doing all of these neat tricks to take control of the ramps, it still feels like he's underwhelming in terms of military. But, admittedly, he has done enough, I think, to thin the herd that I don't think Hamster can exactly punish his army-based greed. Taking a lot of damage on the pariah, including almost 150 damage that cannot be restored. Hamster is going to do his darndest to try to escape backward whence he came. Really, he could take the pariah and move it in a different direction a little bit, but now maybe he's thinking of exactly that. No, maybe not. Maybe it just did that on its own. You can see how they struggle to actually deal significant damage to that unit. It's such a powerhouse in terms of its durability, right? Another one making its way over here. So the pariahs themselves are doing their jobs, but it does feel to me like the tier 2, now that it's finished, should actually give way to some pretty powerful responses here. But we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I think Mass Hydra is clearly the route to go here. The Bactylisks are an extra investment, and they're much better versus, like, say, swarmed, gateway units or something, like Zealots, Legionnaires, etc. But the Pariahs are making it a little bit more difficult to deal with that. So Mass Hydra should absolutely give way to a decisive Neblime victory here as he takes 12 o'clock and starts to saturate it. But we have sort of gotten Hamster caught up. He hasn't been able to take 6 o'clock. There is going to be a pariah to clear that quasi. More scribes coming out of the embassy and stuff. We've seen some of the nexuses go idle. So Hamster might be, he might have been able to replenish his stocks a little bit faster, but still down 40 workers, down a base. And now, looking at a relatively even technology with the Iral Iris already finished, we've got Larvosks here, the Matraval Nest is out, so I would not be surprised to see either Matroleths or Convolisks to just occupy the times of the Pariahs with Rilla Rokors. Now, at the same time, this Nexus at 6 o'clock can just get canceled. This base at 12 might be a little bit harder for Hamster to break into by the same degree, thanks to the Scorchwriths being here. Now, they do deal less damage than they used to, so this ground army will actually stay alive a little bit more. And because the Scorchwriths cost Vespene now, killing them is actually a little bit more of an economic win. And there are no units over here to do too much because all of them move down to 6 o'clock. So at this point, you know, Hamster, remember how powerful his pariahs were? He's got 4 of them on location, and most of them are pretty healthy. This can absolutely be a pretty deadly force here, and you can even see him using the splash damage onto the sprays just to kill some extra workers. But he's doing really, really well right now, precisely because he's trying to focus down the units before they can attain some sort of critical mass. But the mass hydras will chew through most of that armor, and you can see just how impactful that ends up being. So there you go. The Carapace swarms are enough to maybe slow down the attack and occupy some more time. As you can see, the Pariah charging forward. That's an expensive unit to just sort of rally in, similar to the Legionnaire at the beginning. And Hamster has to call GG. So Neblime takes the game. A lot of worker harassment that, it does feel like Hamster had all of the tools to see that. You know, you can move through with the Witness and spot the structure there. And even then, it took many, many times to have Neblime get on operational. With 15 Skither Cores, there's a lot of opportunity for there to be some sort of counterplay. And even after that, you could see how competitive the military actually was. So I feel like while on its face, it probably looks like Neblime just kind of abused like a strategy related to mass air, I don't think it was actually as effective as it was in previous patches. And I do think Hamster had a chance to strike back. But we'll see if he gets on the board in the next game of the set. We are on Impetus. Hamster at 12 o'clock with the Protoss Orange, the Orange Protoss. That's right. And very down here on the back, we've got Neblime's White Zerg. I wonder what Neblime is speaking of at this very moment. I feel like he might be talking about Embassy or something, because he did make a comment in the server. I think it must have been between these games that Hamster screwed him up with, or messed him up with the way that the Protoss went like one gate Embassy or something like that. So Fast Embassy seems to be doing some pretty good stuff. And hey, like I said at the beginning of the Sideshow match, remember, this map, of course, Impetus by Veek7, Sideshow by me. Remember that we are going to be doing some higher tier events where players like these are going to be competing in actual competitive tournaments. If you think you can take on some of these guys, you think you can show them what for, I highly recommend hopping into our Discord server, downloading the project, getting it all set up. We can help you if you need it. Although once the launcher is out, we don't think you'll need any help. And of course, we're definitely thinking about ways to improve it. So, you know, feedback is always welcome. But first, you got to actually play the damn thing. Now, there is a macro hatch coming online over here. This is an interesting spot because obviously, I mean, I guess it's kind of like close enough to the gas that you could get like maybe 3.5 workers in terms of efficiency would be enough for that if you were distance mining it for some particular reason. It feels to me like this is just here for obviously like coverage, making sure that your your defenses are able to be put up by the choke and your enemy can't just charge on in. What this kind of makes me think of though, as the pool comes in, the Legionnaire being the first combat unit, second gate behind it over on the orange side of the map. To me, I look at this, and I wonder if it wouldn't actually be better to move this Hatchros closer to the gas, because then you still have like a straight line rally point out of your ramp. But I suppose small units like Zetracors can still just run up here, and maybe even Quasis can run up here between this area. So I don't think it makes a wall. Obviously, it's going to be more awkward for Protoss units, but we'll just have to wait and see. So, again, without even being able to make any combat units here, Neblime is going for that late pool. And there is actually a Warden warping in over here while a Kagrin comes up. So here comes the Legionnaire. Obviously, it has occupied some units. The Worker and the Legionnaire are not working together at this point. More workers have been pulled. The Kagrin is up. That Scribe is no more, so it's just going to be the one Warden. But I think he honestly... Neblime is done with it, apparently. I am struggling to see why. He had 2 Quasis coming, and he could have absolutely dealt with that. So that's a quickie, man. That's a fast one. So remember when I said, you know, maybe Hamster will get on the board? Apparently, that's the way that he did it. So, you know what? That should make everybody feel a little bit happier. You see Neblime get owned by something like that, you realize he is mortal, man. Neblime can absolutely get bopped over here. So if you too want to bop Neblime, get on into this Discord server, download this fucking project, get around, spread the word, tell your friends, and yeah, donate me on Patreon, except Patreon is coffee. There you go. Killer. GG.